we looking at the history of boxing where I don't understand what's going on with Duran. Maybe it's his birthday. I don't know, but somehow on the gram they're celebrating this guy and they're pulling up all his fights and it's Monday and they're probably going. I think they had some type of a vote where they were talking about who was going to be um who what great fighter that Top Rank promoted that they wanted to see today, and I guess they said it was Duran. So you look at Duran, who uh, was a monster personified. There was nothing. There was no bigger monster than Roberto Duran back in the 70s. And this dude went up 12 pounds and beat what I would consider the greatest fighter that I'd ever seen. And fuck it. As far as I'm concerned, Sugar Ray Leonard is the greatest fighter that ever lived. The dude had a 2-year layoff and beat Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler. He beat Duran twice. The first fight that he had with Duran was a classic. And I think that a lot of people will consider that one of the all-time great fights. But he made him quit the second time. Regardless of why he made him quit, he did make him quit. We're talking about Roberto Duran, looking at the fact that Duran fought the monsters of his day. He was so good at lightweight that he had to go up 12 more pounds to get competition because there was none in the lightweight division. I mean, this guy was a killer. And you talk about the lightweight division, and we just talk about the past 30 years, 40 years in the lightweight division, where we've had the likes of Pernell Whitaker. Pernell Whitaker, which was so great, can shut out Azuma Nelson. Google Azuma Nelson. Then you had uh, Shane Mosley was in the lightweight division. Floyd Mayweather was in the lightweight division at one time. Julio Cesar Chavez was in the lightweight division. Even Oscar De La Hoya for a time was in the lightweight division. Vasily Lomachenko. I'm not even going to mention these other guys that's currently in the lightweight division outside of Lomachenko, because Lomachenko is the only one who I felt could have competed with Duran, and he wouldn't have beat Duran. Guy goes 12 pounds to fight Sugar Ray Leonard. And just to put this in perspective, when we talk about Duran, we talk about Leonard, we talk about Hearns, we talk about Hagler, we talk about guys who are 15 round fighters. We're not talking about this 12 round nonsense that, I don't want to minimize the fact that people get hurt in the sport. But even after they reduced it from 15 to 12, folks were still getting hurt. Even when folks, even when we went from weighing in the day of the fight to 36 hours after the weigh-in, then you fight, it's still not positive because you still got guys who sign up for, let's say, the welterweight championship of the world, which is 147 pounds, and then they sit and eat for a day and a half. And the next thing you know, they come in at 160, 165. I mean, we're not talking about that. Roberto Duran was the man when you had to weigh in the day of the fight and fight 15 rounds. And it wasn't none of this, you know, defensive 1-2 punch clinch and hold. We're talking about fighting boxing for a full 15 rounds or until the other guy couldn't take it no more or until his consciousness was taken from him. This is what we talk about when we talk about a guy like Roberto Duran. Like, I don't understand what the hell these peoples are talking about in this era, where we look at, you know, a guy who can have 50 fights and his last fight is against a guy who wasn't a full-time boxer, and because he made the most money out of any fighter in the history of the sport, and because he's never been in a fight where he took a professional loss, we can put him on this pedestal where we forget guys like Leonard and Hagler and Hearns and Wolfer Benitez and Ray Mancini and Alexis Arguello and Julio Cesar Chavez. Like, you forget all those guys just because this guy made the most money. What are we talking about when we talk about Roberto Duran? Like, his nickname was the Hands of Stone. He didn't have like a nickname where the Punisher or uh, the Killer or uh, even the Greatest. This dude was Hands of Stone. What does that say? When a dude, his nickname is the Hands of Stone, and he punches you, and some folks say it was the worst thing that had ever happened to them, the worst pain they had ever had to feel was realizing they got hit that one time by Roberto Duran and they had to keep fighting through it until they just couldn't take it anymore. What are we talking about? Like, I get it. People are captivated by the present time and it makes them ignorant to the past. And, don't get me wrong, the worst thing that Duran ever did was quit with Leonard. But to Duran's credit, Leonard was about to knock him out. That's what was going to happen. And Duran didn't want to give that to Leonard. But Leonard was setting him up. He figured him out. He understood that if he boxed and used his jab and used his movement, it would frustrate Duran, because Duran, if one thing Duran did not want to do is play keep away. And you add all the other nuances that Ray Leonard did and the frustration and the psychological rhetoric that Ray Leonard was doing in the course of the fight. For a guy like Duran, he couldn't handle that. And he definitely didn't like Ray Leonard. And the last person he would ever want to lose to was Ray Leonard. And he knew he couldn't go 15 that night. And he said, I'm not going to get knocked out by this guy. Like, if it was anybody else, the Hearns fight, was knocked out in 2 rounds. Even if Hagler somehow knocked him out within their fight, I think Duran would have been okay with that. No fighter is okay with losing. But if you just happen to get beat by a guy who on that particular night is just better than you, that's one thing. But Duran getting knocked out by Ray Leonard, of all people, no, he's like, no, fuck this, I'm quitting. That's exactly what he did. That is what happened. I don't care about what nobody says about that. But be that as it may. And I love Terrence Crawford. I think Terrence Crawford is by far the best fighter in the world. And I get it. You got Canelo. He's the best fighter pound for pound. But if they're fighting at 160, ain't no way I'm putting my money on Canelo over Duran. At 147, ain't no way I'm putting my money on Crawford over Duran. I'm not putting Spence over Duran. Don't even consider mentioning anything remotely like Charlo to me when you're talking Duran. Let's talk about triple, no Triple G. You keep naming them from the past 15 years. None of them beat Duran when Duran was at his best. None of them beat Duran when he wasn't even at his best, because he wasn't at his best at 147. He wasn't at his best at 154. He wasn't at his best at 160, but he was still better than everybody today. So, whatever this day is that we're supposed to be celebrating Duran, that I've seen on Instagram, I don't know if it's this guy's birthday. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Top Rank, but they put this stuff out about Duran, and yeah, I'm going to talk my shit about Duran, because maybe in the top, I if I was to build a Mount Rushmore of boxing, it would have Ali, it would have Leonard, it would have Robinson, and it would have Duran. It would have Duran. He beats everybody except Leonard and Robinson. I don't think he beat Robinson either. I don't know. Sometimes I don't even think Leonard beats Robinson. I don't think Robinson beats Leonard. I don't know if Duran beats Robinson. Well, Duran beat Leonard once, and I don't know, but ain't nobody beating the three of them.